Well, this week on What the Hype, we're returning to Hill Valley because the 40th anniversary of Back to the Future was last month, and now it's time to talk about the sequels rather than wait 4 years like they did in making them. So we're very excited. Welcome back, everyone, to What the Hype. Please be sure, again, you're following us on all the social medias. We are at What the Hype Podcast, except on X, where we are What the Hype Show. We are releasing full episodes and bonus pop culture content over on YouTube, where we're also recording this. So please check us out at youtube.com/@WhatTheHypePodcast. And as I mentioned, it's Back to the Future time once again. Me and Pam. Hey, Pam.
Hey, Eric.
Thanks for coming on this journey with me.
I've been so happy to come along this journey with you. It's been so much fun to relive this trilogy. We both grew up loving it, as we talked about in the first part. So it's just really fun to get the opportunity to revisit it, and for such a good reason too. 40 years is insane. I still remember when they were celebrating the fact that, you know, we were in we made it to 2015.
Yeah.
And yeah, because that was such a big year for the franchise. So
yeah, what
yeah,
started off as
like
a far in the future, what are the bounds of human possibility? 2015. Oh, we'll never get there. Surely we'll have flying cars and everything,
and hoverboards, and
to actually get to 2015. I think that was the last time I saw the trilogy in theaters, because they did like a big re-release push, and you know, getting to see them all back to back
that's
to
a
back.
good point. I don't think I heard any buzz about the first movie getting put back in theaters. I would have loved to have gone to see it on the big screen.
My favorite thing from that year, just since we're talking about sort of being celebratory toward the trilogy, is that USA Today, on the date that they go to in the future, actually released a fake cover to USA Today featuring the news that Martin McFly Jr. Was jailed and arrested. So they had like the original cover of the newspaper from the beginning of part 2, and that went out across the nation as USA Today's main cover. So that was a really, really cool thing, honoring
That's incredible.
The movie. Yeah, I bought several copies and sent them around to friends that year.
I was just going to ask if you, as a Back to the Future superfan, had gotten your hands on a copy of that. That seems like something that you would have gone out in
I was
search
driving
of.
all around, I think, the Chicago suburbs for work that day, and I just like went into every Walgreens and 7-Eleven I could find and got like maybe 10 copies. And then I had to store 10 copies of paper, so it's kind of a be careful what you wish for thing, but no, I still have 1 or 2 copies, and they've aged pretty well. I thought that, you know, really for Back to the Future being such a iconic movie franchise, we talked a little bit about in our earlier episodes on the subject about, you know, why there weren't sequels and kind of how the property has been managed effectively over the years, and I think very early on just felt content being an iconic film trilogy, and so they do things that look back to it, you know, occasionally, that are very just celebratory and very aren't we great kind of, isn't this cool, and that's it. That's just every so often you get a really cool look back collector's kit or a cool new toy or some new Funkos or something, but that's what the life of a Back to the Future fan is, I think, going around scooping up all the newspapers.
And you gotta respect the creators for really digging their heels into the idea of that, and, you know, not going back on it or changing their mind, because and I'm sure we'll kind of get into this as we get into talking about Back to the Future Part 3, but, you know, for probably any other creator or studio of a iconic pop culture franchise, there's so many ways that they could, you know, feasibly figure out how to continue this or even reboot it for new audiences. And the fact that they've chosen not to, and they've stuck to their guns, and they said, this is the trilogy we set out to make, and we did it, and that's that. I think that there's something to be said for the integrity of really just sticking to their guns.
Yeah, and I know something else that, you know, I want to bring up again that we brought up the last time is how it's remained a trilogy, whereas other iconic properties from the 80s have since done reboots and that. And so it stands in a stark contrast. You know, even thinking about Ghostbusters, which has had
Mm-hmm.
several films released and films, you know, reboots that then have trilogies too. Again, even with an iconic car, the Ecto one's in a basement somewhere, they pull off the cover and it's like, oh, this is Granddad's old vehicle. You know, they haven't done that with the DeLorean, and that makes it kind of all the more special, I think, too, just
Definitely.
to have
Yeah.
what we have and figure out how else to explore enjoying it. So one thing I want to ask, because we have now rewatched the Back to the Future sequels since sitting down to record, and we'll be doing episodes devoted to each of those movies here on the What the Hype feed. But Pam, what sticks out? Because it had been a while. We touched about the sequels last time, but now that you've seen them, what new and exciting things, or what comes to mind now that you've seen them more recently?
Well, I think I had mentioned before that I think that out of the three, interestingly, a lot of the imagery that I associate right away with Back to the Future actually probably comes from Back to the Future Part 2 for some odd reason. It's not because I didn't watch them in order. I know we did, but I think it's just because Back to the Future Part 2 is so much bigger in a way that the other two are not. And I think it makes sense for a sequel. You want to come out guns blazing and make a splash because the first one did so well. But also I think it's easy for the two to blend in your mind because you literally have elements of the first movie in the second movie, and so we'll go into that as well as we kind of dive deeper. But I do want to talk a little bit about just overall rewatching the third one, because I also said that it wasn't my favorite and I couldn't even really remember like most of what happened. I went into it with Eric's general thoughts in mind, which was that there's a charm to the idea that they're stuck in a time when a lot of the technology isn't available, and I think that did make it a lot more enjoyable. I thought that maybe it's just me and my heart getting a little bit more weepy as I get older. I thought it was really sweet that, you know, Doc didn't want to go back because he found love, and, you know, yeah, I think that hit a little harder as like an adult than it did like as a child, where it's like, well, of course he has to go back with Marty, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And so like it makes sense that he would be conflicted because of Clara, and yeah, I just think that the stakes did feel higher when they couldn't just run out to another plant and steal more plutonium, you know,
Yeah,
from the Libyans.
I
So,
know.
yeah.
The Libyans. I'm glad they never came back into any of the sequels.
That's true. I mean, like a lot of it does come back, and it's like it's one of those things where it's like it shouldn't be funny the third time around, but it is. You know what I
Yes.
mean? If they had done the Libyan joke 3 times, I probably would have laughed 3 times at
Yeah.
you know Doc
Well,
being
and
like the Libyans.
it's so self-referential, and I think that that's the point of a lot of the sequels. Take a lot of joy in recreating scenes, whether it's the skateboard
Yes.
chase scene being nodded to in the hoverboard chase scene, all the manure that shows up across the various films.
Yes. It's their
Um,
version of pie in the face.
Yeah, Marty waking up in bed and somebody played by Leah Thompson, you know, kind of coming to rouse him. Like it just history repeats itself, and history repeats itself,
Yes.
and history repeats itself. And so we know this. Knowing this, it's fun to see them do the multiple sort of permutations across timelines to kind of show, not even just tell, but show how that sort of thing occurs.
And I was going to say, in addition to that, but I think you're right. I think the reason it does really work so well is because we all know that history repeats, or if it doesn't repeat, it at least rhymes. You know, so there should be things that keep happening over and over again, and that makes sense. So we know this to be a fact, so we believe it, and it's more palatable. But also, it feels a lot with these movies like they almost kind of run on like a sitcom story beat too, as well. Like if you look at sitcoms like you know, like How I Met Your Mother, they have repeat gags that happen every season. So like Slapsgiving is the one that always comes to mind for me, is like a iconic example. It's like, you know, they do that bit I think 4 seasons until they retire it. And every year you get, you know, excited for the next Slapsgiving. And
Yeah.
so it's kind of like with these movies as well. It's like every trilogy you get excited to see like what is going to come back. And, you know, whether it's the manure or, you know, Marty waking up to some kind of variation of his mother, for example, or him freaking out because somebody calls him a chicken and that's like the worst insult that he could ever think of, and so then he has no control over what happens next. It's like,
Yeah,
you know,
oh God.
yeah, so it's great.
Especially with the chicken thing too, which, you know, was kind of introduced, shoehorned in the sequel, ham-fisted, you know, into the second movie. Nevertheless, it is that loop. It happens all the time, constantly into, and even number 3. And at least with there's hope at the end of breaking the cycle, which is something I think
Yes.
very bold and exciting that the third film does to pay off that, because you like seeing our characters getting trapped in that cycle is it's something I'm glad that they explored in these 2 sequels. And also thinking about the sequels, it's almost as if you know, they knew that they had just an absolute rock star fire cast, ensemble cast, and then found ways in the sequels to make the most use out of them. Now, there are notable exceptions. Crispin Glover, very famously not in the sequels, though you wouldn't be wrong for assuming that he was, and we'll talk about that a little bit. But Tom Wilson getting to play, you know, old Biff, young Biff, side alternate timeline Biff, Griff, you know, Mad Dog Buford Tannen, you know, all the sort of the character's own descendants and ancestors, as well as Michael J. Fox playing his own descendants and ancestors, son, daughter, and Seamus McFly. You know, Leah Thompson as well, multiple Strickland characters. Getting to see the actors, you know, who played characters in the first film really continue to explore not just their own characters and reprise their characters from the first film, especially in the 1955 era, getting to see that actor play Strickland even more. Now, also in the third film has something to do. And I just really like it because the sequels, for all the different places they go and all the different things they do, manage to feel familiar and manage to feel like a love letter to themselves. There's a lot of care put in, I think, to character that you just don't see in other films. I think that it makes it part of what makes Back to the Future so special, is getting to play in a sandbox. The sandbox is as wide as the world, but it's with just a few key players, and how many different ways can you... It's like when we were kids playing in a sandbox, we had a few action figures, a few dolls that we'd, you know, play with, and you create an infinite number of stories from the same cast, and that's what the sequels feel like to me.
Yeah, that's a great way to put it.
Thanks. So we, like I said, are going to get into individual sequels with our upcoming episodes. But first, I wanted to talk about the box office, too. I was curious about the budget and how much money the films made at the time, and if the sequels had held up to the original. So looking into this, the second Back to the Future movie had twice the budget of the first one. The first movie, on a budget of $19 million, ended up grossing $388 million worldwide. The second film, budget of $40 million, and that made about $332 million worldwide. So a respectable showing, the first film being the most profitable, but the sequel coming pretty closely. And then the third film, also a budget of $40 million, made about $246 million worldwide. So still up there. The second movie was like the 6th highest grossing film domestically, the 3rd grossing film worldwide in 1989 when it came out. So, you know, these films did perform successfully. They were successful at the time, but I don't think you can put a price on how lasting they are.
Right. And how would you know at the time that they would withstand the test of time? You know, it's, you never know with these movies. And like I said, I think I said this in our first episode, it's not just the fact that they're still beloved, but that a lot of, the references, the cultural references have deeply rooted themselves into the pop culture zeitgeist. And a great example of that is like if you're talking about time travel with people, like the layman's term would be to say like, okay, but like, is this Back to the Future rules?
Yeah. Yeah, for closed loop time travel.
Yeah, exactly.
Or,
instead of being all fancy, saying closed loop time travel, yeah, it's like, is it Back to the Future rules? Is it like something? Are we talking something else? And everybody kind of knows what that means. Don't let yourself be seen. Your consequences have actions, but when you get back to the real world, like all of that happens because it's supposed to happen. It's like you're always supposed to be there. You're always supposed to come back.
Yep, absolutely. So another thing I want to touch on just before we wrap up is you had a note about the endings that you noticed this time.
Yeah. So like, I was just going to say, I just think it's so funny that at the end of every movie, you get a teaser for what's coming up next. So, it's always like, Marty coming back or the Doc coming back or, some kind of like
but
sign
wait, there's
that's
more.
Like, exactly. It's like we have to go, and so like at the end of the first one, it's like we have to go back to the future because we have to save your legacy. And I just thought that was like, I assume that that's how it happens in the in the original movie, even though they didn't know they were going to get the green light for all
that's
three. Right.
Yeah.
And so I just keep thinking to myself, like, what a gamble to put that in there as a little like appetizer, a little teaser for what you could get if they let them make another movie.
And in a non-MCU world where that didn't exist yet, like the concept of a trailer or a nod to a future installment when none were planned or greenlit or written or anything is just absolutely wild, probably unique. Imagine if Goonies was like, next time on Goonies 2. It's like,
right.
You just don't, it's part of the charm of Back to the Future. Like, I'm glad they got the sequels. The sequels are great.
Yeah.
But there very much is that you've got to come back with me and we don't need roads ending.
Right.
The first film that like, the first film is almost a self-contained story, right? Kid gets back in 1955, trapped. He has to save himself from disappearing and get his parents together. He comes back. Things are slightly changed, but everyone's safe and good. Could have ended the movie there, but wait, there's more. And it really just gets a stinger. It gets you excited for, I think, the possibilities because they're dealing with something as wide, far-reaching as time travel. Why pigeonhole themselves into just telling a single self-contained story?
And I think it works in two ways. Like in one way, it makes you feel like the people that have the reins, right, that are in the driver's seat, they have a roadmap for you. But on the other hand, if like to your point about the original Back to the Future being a self-contained story, if we had never gotten part 2 or part 3, it also leaves you feeling like these characters are real enough that they're existing out in the world and that they are on another mission, and that's okay. Like, we don't really need to see it. It would be nice to see it, but it's comforting to know that they're still tag teaming whatever issues arise as a result of Doc making this DeLorean and meddling with time. Yeah. And I think there's something really charming about that.
You can see how it would spawn an animated series. Not that animated series need tremendous justifications for existing. Going. Yeah, because again, it's really just like throwing darts. Where do you end up this week? It's fun. Mm-hmm. It's a fun idea, and you like the characters enough, even at the end of the first film, to have that buy-in to want to see them do that stuff. So, on that note, I think we're about to get into talking about individual sequels. So please, if you're following us, look for those videos later in the week. This was our overview of talking about Back to the Future sequel. I want to thank Pam. I want to thank everyone viewing and listening because I'm very excited to get to talk about parts 2 and 3 of Back to the Future. And with that said, here is a word from our sponsors.